The Zerathi Empire had ruled the stars for over 300 cycles. They had conquered 17 star systems and brought hundreds of species under their control. No one had ever said no to them. No one had ever fought back and won. The Zerathi believed they were the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and for a very long time, they were right. Admiral Vegas was one of the greatest commanders in the Empire. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his eyes glowed with a cold yellow light. He had led the conquest of 5 worlds himself. He had watched cities burn and species bow before him. He had never known fear, and he had never known defeat. When the Empire's long-range sensors found a small blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy, Vexus was given command of the invasion fleet. 3,000 warships, the largest force ever assembled for a single world. The High Council wanted to send a message to the rest of the galaxy. They wanted everyone to see what happened to planets that stood in the way of the Zerathi Empire. Vexus stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched the blue planet grow larger on the view screen. His officers moved around him, checking systems and preparing weapons. Everything was going according to plan. Admiral, his communications officer, said, "We are receiving a transmission from the planet. They call it Earth. Put it on a main screen," Vexus ordered. The image changed to show a human female. She had dark hair pulled back from her face and calm brown eyes. She wore a simple gray uniform with no decorations. Behind her, Vexus could see other humans working at stations filled with screens and controls. "I am Admiral Catherine Cole of the United Earth Defense Coalition," the human said. "We have received your message demanding our unconditional surrender." Vexus smiled. He had sent that message 3 days ago. It was the same message the Empire sent to every world they conquered. Surrender or die. Most species surrendered. The ones that did not were destroyed completely. Their worlds burned to nothing but ash and memory. "We decline," Catherine said. The smile faded from Vexus's face. He looked around at his officers, who seemed just as surprised as he was. "Furthermore," Catherine continued, "we know exactly where your fleet is. We have been tracking your ships since you entered our solar system. We know how many vessels you have, what weapons you carry, and how your commanders like to fight." Vexus felt something cold move through his chest. It was not fear. He did not know fear, but it was something close. "We have studied every species you have conquered," Catherine said. "We have learned from their mistakes. We know why they lost, and we have made sure that we will not lose the same way." "This is impossible," Vexus muttered. "No species has ever detected our approach. Our stealth technology is perfect." But the human kept talking as if she could hear his thoughts. "Your stealth technology is good," Catherine said, "but it is not perfect. 40 years ago, one of your probes crashed on a moon in our solar system. We found it. We studied it. We learned how your systems work, and we built better ones." Vexus turned to his sensor officer. "Is this true? Did we lose a probe in this system?" The officer checked his screens, his clawed fingers moving quickly. Yes, Admiral. Records show a survey probe went missing in this region 43 cycles ago. It was assumed to be a malfunction. Catherine Cole leaned forward slightly on the screen. Her eyes seemed to look directly at Vexus, even though he knew she could not see him. "You have been warned," she said. "The Zerathi Empire has never faced a species like humanity. We do not surrender. We do not submit. We do not give up. We have spent 40 years preparing for this exact moment, and we are ready for you." "Admiral," the tactical officer said, his voice shaking slightly, "our sensors are detecting something strange. There are energy signatures throughout the system that we did not notice before. They are very faint, but they are there." Vexus stared at the screen. The human female had not moved. She sat perfectly still, waiting. What kind of energy signatures? Vexus demanded. Unknown, Admiral. They could be ships. They could be weapons platforms. They could be anything. Our sensors cannot identify them. On the screen, Catherine Cole spoke again. I want you to understand something, Admiral. I know you are listening. I know you think you are going to win this war. Every species you have conquered thought they could fight you, and every one of them lost. But humanity is different. She paused for a moment. We are a species that has been fighting wars since before we learned to write. We have fought each other across every piece of land on our planet. We have built weapons that could destroy our own world many times over. We have looked into the darkness of our own nature and survived. The Zarathi Empire is powerful, but you have never faced anything like us. Catherine stood up from her chair. You have one chance to turn around and leave our solar system. If you do, we will let you go in peace. We do not want war. We do not want to destroy your fleet. But if you continue toward Earth, we will defend ourselves with everything we have. And I promise you, Admiral, you will not like what happens next. The transmission ended. Vexus stood in silence for a long moment. Around him, his officers waited for orders. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Admiral, the communications officer said carefully, what should we do? Vexus thought about the human's words. He thought about the energy signatures his sensors had detected. He thought about the probe that had crashed 40 years ago and what the humans might have learned from it. And then he thought about what the High Council would do to him if he turned back without firing a single shot. We continue as planned, Vexus said. His voice was steady, but something inside him felt uncertain for the first time in his long career. Send word to the fleet. We advance on the human homeworld at first light. The officers hurried to obey his commands. Ships began to move into formation. Weapons were charged and ready. But as Vexus watched the blue planet on his view screen, he could not shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The human had spoken with such confidence, such certainty. She had not begged or threatened or pleaded. She had simply stated facts, as if the outcome of the coming battle was already decided, for the first time in 300 cycles of conquest. Admiral Vexus wondered if the Zarathi Empire had finally met its match. Commander Daniel Hayes had been born into a world that was preparing for war. When he was a child, his parents told him stories about the stars and the dangers that waited there. When he was a young man, he joined the military and learned to fight enemies he had never seen. Now he was 42 years old, and the enemies had finally arrived. He sat in the tactical center of Luna Base, deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon. Around him, dozens of officers worked at their stations, monitoring the Zarathi fleet as it moved through the outer solar system. The room was filled with soft glow of holographic displays showing ship positions, weapon systems, and communication channels. 3,000 ships, said Lieutenant Maria Santos from her station nearby. That is the largest fleet they have ever sent against a single world. Daniel nodded slowly. He had studied the Zarathi for most of his adult life. He knew their tactics, their weapons, their strengths and weaknesses. He also knew that humanity had never faced anything like this before. What is their current speed? He asked. They will reach weapons range of Earth in approximately 6 hours, Maria replied. 6 hours. After 40 years of preparation, humanity had 6 hours left before the real test began. Daniel thought about the history that had led to this moment. It had started in 1986, when a strange object crashed into the ice of Europa, one of the moons of Jupiter. At the time, humans did not have the technology to reach Europa, so the object sat there, frozen and forgotten, for decades. Then, in 2031, the first human expedition reached Europa. They found the object buried deep in the ice. It was a probe, clearly built by an alien civilization, with technology far beyond anything humans had ever created. The scientists who studied it realized two important things very quickly. First, they realized that the probe was designed to search for life on other worlds. It had been mapping the solar system and collecting data before it crashed. Second, they realized that the probe belonged to a civilization that was expanding through the galaxy, conquering every world in its path. The scientists brought their findings to the governments of Earth. At first, no one believed them. The idea of alien invaders seemed like something from a movie, not reality. But the evidence was clear, and eventually, the leaders of the world had to accept the truth. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and the beings that shared the universe with them were coming. For the next 40 years, Earth prepared. Governments that had been enemies learned to work together. Resources that had been wasted on small conflicts were redirected toward defense. Scientists worked day and night to understand the alien technology and build weapons that could match it. The work was done in secret. The people of Earth were told that they were building space stations for research and mining. They were told that the new military ships were for protecting trade routes and colonies. Only a small number of people knew the real truth. Daniel Hayes was one of those people. "Commander," Maria said, pulling Daniel from his thoughts. "Admiral Cole is requesting a status update on all defense systems." Daniel stood and walked to the main display at the center of the room. With a few touches, he brought up a map of the entire solar system. Earth sat at the center, surrounded by layers of defense. The first layer was the orbital defense grid. 800 weapons platforms circled Earth, armed with kinetic accelerators, micromissiles, and directed energy weapons. Each platform was controlled by an artificial intelligence that could react faster than any human pilot. The second layer was the inner fleet. 200 warships hidden in the shadow of the moon, waiting for the signal to attack. These ships were built using technology reverse-engineered from the alien probe. They were faster, stronger, and more deadly than anything the Zerathi had ever faced. The third layer was the secret that would decide the war. Daniel activated his communication device. "Admiral Cole, this is Commander Hayes at Luna Base. All defense systems are online and ready. The orbital grid is at full power. The inner fleet is in position, and the shadow fleet reports ready status." Catherine Cole's voice came through the speaker, calm and steady. "Understood, Commander. What about the gate?" Daniel looked at a specific point on the display, far from Earth, hidden among the asteroids between Mars and Jupiter. There, floating in the darkness of space, was humanity's greatest achievement, a portal that could move ships instantly across vast distances. The technology had come from something even older than the Zerathi probe. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, human explorers had discovered ruins from a civilization that had died millions of years ago. Among those ruins, they found pieces of a machine that could bend space itself. It had taken 20 years to understand how the machine worked. It had taken another 10 years to build a working version. But now the gate was ready, and it would change everything. "The gate is fully charged and standing by," Daniel reported. "The outer fleet is in position on the other side, waiting for your command. How many ships do we have in total?" Catherine asked. Daniel checked the numbers. 4,732, Admiral. Every ship we have built in the last 40 years. Every transport, every carrier, every mining vessel that we could arm with weapons. The entire human fleet. There was a pause on the other end of the communication. "The Zerathi think they are invading a primitive world," Catherine said finally. "They think we are scared and weak and unprepared. They have no idea what is waiting for them." "No, Admiral," Daniel agreed. "They do not. Then let us show them. Maintain current positions and wait for my signal. When the Zerathi enter weapons range, we begin the operation." The communication ended, Daniel looked around the tactical center at the men and women working at their stations. They were all young, most of them born after the preparations had begun. They had trained their whole lives for this moment, knowing that they might have to give everything to protect their world. Maria Santos looked up from her screens and caught Daniel's eye. "Do you think we can win, Commander?" Daniel thought about the question for a moment. He thought about the 40 years of sacrifice and hard work. He thought about the ships waiting in the darkness, the weapons charging in orbit, the soldiers ready to fight and die for their homes. "I think we are about to find out," he said. "But I know this much. Whatever happens today, the Zerathi will never forget the name of Earth." Maria nodded and turned back to her work. 6 hours remained until the battle began. Daniel sat down in his chair and watched the enemy fleet move closer, closer toward the trap that humanity had spent 4 decades preparing. The waiting was almost over. Admiral Vexus watched the blue planet grow larger on his view screen. His fleet had traveled through the human solar system without any resistance. No ships had come to meet them. No weapons had fired. The humans seemed to be hiding on their world, waiting for death to come. "Pathetic," Vexus said to his officers. "They send us threats and warnings, and then they do nothing. This will be the easiest conquest in the history of the Empire." His tactical officer looked up from his screens. "Admiral, we are detecting the weapons platforms the humans mentioned. Approximately 800 installations in orbit around the planet. 800 platforms against 3,000 warships," Vexus laughed. "They might as well throw rocks at us. Order the first wave to advance and destroy the platforms. Once they are gone, begin bombardment of the major population centers." 500 Zerathi warships broke formation and moved toward Earth, their weapons charged with deadly energy, ready to turn the orbital defenses into dust and fire. The crews were confident. They had done this many times before on many different worlds. They never saw the attack coming from behind the moon. 200 human warships appeared as if from nowhere. One moment there was empty space. The next moment there was a wall of metal and weapons moving at incredible speed. The human ships hit the rear of the Zerathi formation before anyone could react. The first shots were not energy beams or plasma bolts. They were solid pieces of metal, fired at a speed that no Zerathi shield had ever been designed to stop. The kinetic rounds tore through the hulls of the Zerathi ships like needles through paper. Explosions filled the space between the moon and Earth, as vessel after vessel broke apart. Vexus spun toward his tactical display, his eyes wide with shock. "Where did they come from?" "Our sensors showed nothing." "I do not know, Admiral," the sensor officer shouted back. "They were invisible until they fired. Our sensors cannot track them properly." More human ships appeared from different directions. They came from behind asteroids, from the shadow of the planet itself, even from within the Zerathi formation. They had been hiding in plain sight, their stealth technology so advanced that the Zerathi had never detected them. "Return fire!" Vexus screamed. "All ships, return fire!" The Zerathi weapons blazed across space, filling the darkness with beams of burning energy. But the human ships were already moving, twisting and turning in ways that should have been impossible. They struck and vanished, appeared and disappeared, like ghosts made of metal and fury. On Luna Base, Daniel Hayes watched the battle unfold on his holographic display. The first phase of the operation was working perfectly. The human ships were destroying Zerathi vessels at a rate of almost 10 to 1, using their superior stealth and speed to avoid return fire. "The orbital platforms are engaging," Maria Santos reported. "Enemy ships are taking heavy damage from kinetic bombardment." Daniel nodded. The weapons platforms were not using the energy weapons that the Zerathi expected. Instead, they were firing solid projectiles at incredible speeds, along with nuclear missiles that detonated with the force of small suns. The Zerathi shields, designed to stop energy attacks, were almost useless against this kind of warfare. "Enemy fleet is breaking formation," another officer called out. "They are trying to regroup, but our ships are preventing them from organizing." This was the key to the human strategy. The Zerathi were used to fighting enemies who stood in neat lines and waited to be destroyed. They had never faced an opponent who used guerrilla tactics, who struck from the shadows and refused to fight fair. Humanity had learned a long time ago that there was no such thing as a fair fight. There was only winning and losing. Back on the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Vexus was struggling to understand what was happening. His fleet was in chaos. Ships were being destroyed faster than he could track them. Communications were filled with screams and confusion. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "These are primitives. They should not have this kind of technology." "Admiral," his second-in-command said, "we have lost almost 300 ships in the first hour of battle. Our formations are broken. The enemy is everywhere and nowhere at the same time." Vexus slammed his fist against the arm of his command chair. "Then we fight harder. Order all ships to concentrate fire on the orbital platforms. If we destroy their fixed defenses, the small fleet cannot stop us forever." The Zerathi fleet began to push forward, ignoring the human ships that harassed them from all sides. They focused their weapons on the orbital platforms, pouring fire into the defenses around Earth. Platforms began to explode under the concentrated attack, but for every platform destroyed, a dozen Zerathi ships were lost. The humans were trading space for blood, pulling back slowly while making the enemy pay for every kilometer they advanced. On the bridge of the carrier Endurance, Admiral Catherine Cole watched the battle with calm eyes. Everything was going according to plan. The Zerathi were doing exactly what she had expected them to do. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "Commander Hayes reports that the enemy has committed their full force to breaking through our defenses. They are not holding any ships in reserve." Catherine nodded. "Then it is time for Phase 2. Signal all ships to stop retreating and form attack formation, and activate the gate." The order went out across the solar system at the speed of light. Human ships that had been falling back suddenly stopped and turned around. They formed into tight groups, their weapons fully charged, and began moving toward the Zerathi fleet instead of away from it at the same time, far away in the asteroid belt. Something incredible happened. The gate activated. It was a ring of metal and energy, 5 kilometers across, floating in the empty darkness between Mars and Jupiter. When it turned on, the center of the ring filled with swirling light, like a whirlpool made of stars. And through that whirlpool came ships, hundreds of ships. Then thousands. Every vessel that humanity had built in the last 40 years poured through the gate and into the battle. Warships and carriers, transports and mining vessels armed with improvised weapons, colony ships converted into troop carriers. The entire human fleet, appearing from across the solar system in the space of minutes. Vexus stared at his tactical display in complete disbelief. The human fleet had gone from hundreds of ships to thousands in the time it took to blink. "This is not possible," he whispered. "This cannot be happening." But it was happening. The human fleet surrounded the Zerathi on all sides, cutting off any chance of retreat. The trap that humanity had spent 40 years building was finally closed, and Admiral Vexus was caught in the middle of it. The battle had turned into a nightmare for the Zerathi Empire. Admiral Vexus stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his fleet die around him. Ships that had conquered worlds were being torn apart by an enemy that should have been easy prey. The humans were everywhere, striking from every direction, giving the Zerathi no chance to organize or fight back effectively. "Admiral, we have lost over 1,000 ships," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking with fear. "The enemy fleet now outnumbers us nearly 2 to 1. Our weapons are not effective against their armor and shields. Vexus could not understand it. The Zerathi had the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Their energy beams could melt through the strongest metals. Their plasma torpedoes could destroy entire cities. But the human ships seemed designed specifically to counter these weapons. Their armor is strange, the tactical officer continued. It absorbs our energy attacks instead of being damaged by them. And their shields redirect our plasma torpedoes away from their hulls. It is like they knew exactly what we would throw at them. Of course they knew, Vexus realized with a sinking feeling. They had 40 years to study that crashed probe. They learned everything about our technology and built defenses against it. We are fighting an enemy that knows us better than we know ourselves. On the carrier Endurance, Catherine Cole allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. The plan was working perfectly. Every weapon, every tactic, every ship had been designed with one purpose: to defeat the Zerathi Empire. The armor on human ships was made from materials that absorbed energy and converted it into power for the ship systems. The more the Zerathi fired at them, the stronger the human ships became. The shields were designed to create electromagnetic fields that pushed plasma torpedoes away, sending them spinning off into empty space. And the weapons that humanity used were things the Zerathi had never seen before. Kinetic accelerators that fired solid metal at fractions of the speed of light. Nuclear missiles that detonated with the force of 1,000 suns. Directed energy beams that use frequencies the Zerathi shields could not block. Catherine had spent her entire career preparing for this battle. She had studied every conquest the Zerathi had made, learned every mistake their victims had made, and made sure that humanity would not repeat those mistakes. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "Commander Hayes reports that the enemy flagship has been located. It is trying to move toward the outer system, probably attempting to retreat." Catherine shook her head. "They do not get to retreat. Not after what they plan to do to Earth. Signal the Falcon Wing to intercept and disable the flagship. I want Admiral Vexus alive." The order was carried out with brutal efficiency. A squadron of fast attack ships broke away from the main battle and chased down the Eternal Dominion. They did not try to destroy the flagship. Instead, they targeted its engines and weapon systems, using precise strikes to cripple the ship without killing its crew. Within an hour, the flagship was floating dead in space, its power systems failing, its weapons offline. Boarding pods attached to the hull, and human soldiers in powered armor cut their way inside. Vexus watched his bridge officers being taken prisoner one by one. He did not resist when the humans came for him. There was no point. His fleet was destroyed, his ship was captured, and everything he believed about the universe had been proven wrong. The human soldiers escorted him to an airlock, where a transport shuttle was waiting. As he was led inside, Vexus saw something through the viewport that made him stop and stare. Earth hung in the darkness of space, beautiful and blue and very much alive. The planet that was supposed to be burning by now, the world that was supposed to be another trophy for the Empire, was completely untouched. Not a single weapon had reached its surface. Not a single city had been damaged. The humans had won. Completely. Totally. Without losing their home. Catherine Cole was waiting when Vexus was brought to the Endurance. She stood in the middle of a large room, surrounded by screens showing the final moments of the battle. The last Zerathi ships were either surrendering or being destroyed. It was over. "Admiral Vexus," Catherine said. "Welcome aboard." Vexus looked at the human female who had destroyed his fleet. She was smaller than he expected, with none of the physical strength that his species valued. But there was something in her eyes that made him uncomfortable. It was not hatred or anger. It was something worse. It was pity. "You fought well," Catherine continued. "Your crews were brave. and your tactics would have worked against any other species we know of. But you made one mistake that cost you everything." "What mistake?" Vexus asked, his voice rough and tired. "You underestimated us," Catherine said simply. "You saw our small planet and our young civilization, and you thought we would be easy prey. You did not bother to learn who we really are." She walked to one of the screens and touched it, bringing up images of human history. Wars and disasters, triumphs and tragedies, moments of terrible darkness and incredible light. "Humanity has been fighting for survival since the beginning of our existence," Catherine said. "We have faced ice ages and plagues, famines and floods. We have fought wars against each other that killed millions of our own kind. We have built weapons capable of destroying our entire planet. And then we found ways to live with those weapons without using them." She turned back to Vexus. "The Zerathi Empire has been conquering for 300 cycles. In that time, you have never lost a war. You have never faced a species that could match your technology. You have never had to struggle or sacrifice or fight for your survival the way we have." Catherine moved closer to the Zerathi admiral. "That is why you lost today. Not because your ships were weaker or your crews were not brave. You lost because you have never learned what it really means to fight. You have never been pushed to your limits. You have never been forced to become something more than you were." She reached out and touched the screen again. The images changed to show the human fleet, thousands of ships moving through space in perfect formation. Humanity has spent 40 years becoming something more. We took a crash probe and built an empire of our own. We developed technology that surpasses anything you have created. We prepared for a war that everyone told us would never come, and when it came, we were ready. Vexus stared at the screen. The human fleet was enormous, far larger than anything the Zerathi had ever assembled. "And this was just the beginning. What happens now?" he asked quietly. Catherine smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Now, I am going to send a message to your empire, and I am going to make sure that every species in the galaxy hears it. Because what happened here today changes everything." She looked directly into Vexus's eyes. "The age of the Zerathi Empire is over. A new power has risen, and we are just getting started." 3 days had passed since the Battle of Earth. The wreckage of the Zerathi fleet drifted through the solar system, silent monuments to the greatest military defeat in galactic history. Of the 3,000 ships that had come to conquer humanity, fewer than 800 managed to escape. The rest were either destroyed or captured, their crews now prisoners of war on the Moon and Mars. Admiral Vexus sat in the cell on Luna Base, staring at the gray walls that surrounded him. He had not spoken much since his capture. There was nothing left to say. Everything he had believed about the universe, about his empire, about his own superiority had been proven wrong in the space of a few terrible hours. "Commander." Daniel Hayes walked through the corridors of Luna Base, feeling the exhaustion in every step. He had not slept properly in days. None of them had. The battle was over, but the work was just beginning. He found Catherine Cole standing at a large viewport, looking out at Earth. The planet hung in the darkness, blue and white and beautiful, completely untouched by the war that had raged around it. Billions of people were down there, going about their lives, most of them only now learning the full truth about what had happened. "The news is spreading fast," Daniel said as he approached. "Every channel on Earth is talking about the battle. People are celebrating in the streets of every major city." Catherine nodded slowly, but she did not smile. "They should celebrate. They earned it. Every person who worked on the defense projects, every soldier who trained for a war they hoped would never come, every scientist who spent their life trying to understand alien technology, they all earned this victory. But?" Daniel asked, hearing something in her voice. Catherine turned to face him. Her eyes were tired, but there was still fire in them. But this is not the end. The Zarathi Empire still exists. They still have more ships, more soldiers, more resources than we do. When word reaches their homeworld about what happened here, they will be angry. They will want revenge. So we prepare for the next attack, Daniel said. Yes, but that is not enough. Catherine walked to a nearby screen and activated it. A map of the galaxy appeared, showing the territory of the Zarathi Empire and the 17 star systems they had conquered. The Zarathi have ruled these systems for centuries. They have enslaved hundreds of species, destroyed entire civilizations. If we just sit here and wait for them to come back, we will be fighting this war forever. Daniel studied the map. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that we take the fight to them. Catherine pointed at the conquered systems. These species were defeated because they were alone. They faced the Empire one at a time, without allies, without support. But what if they were not alone anymore? What if someone showed them that the Zarathi could be beaten? Understanding dawned in Daniel's eyes. You want to share our technology with them. Help them fight back. More than that, I want to build an alliance. A coalition of species that stands together against the Empire. Catherine's voice grew stronger as she spoke. The Zarathi conquered the galaxy by dividing their enemies. We can free the galaxy by uniting them. The idea was bold, perhaps even reckless. Humanity had just survived one war, and Catherine was already planning another. But Daniel could see the logic in it. If they waited for the Empire to rebuild and attack again, they might not be so lucky the second time. The Council will need to approve this, Daniel said. I know. I am meeting with them tomorrow. Catherine turned back to the viewport. But I wanted you to know first. You have been with me since the beginning, Daniel. I could not have done any of this without you. Daniel moved to stand beside her. Together, they looked out at the stars. Do you think we can really do it? They asked quietly. Free the galaxy, I mean. It sounds impossible. Catherine smiled for the first time in days. 3 days ago, defeating the largest Zarathi invasion fleet in history sounded impossible. We did it anyway. She placed her hand on the viewport, her fingers spreading against the cold glass. Humanity has always done impossible things. We walked on the moon when we still used horses for transportation. We cured diseases that killed millions. We built machines that could think, and ships that could travel faster than light. Every time someone told us something could not be done, we found a way to do it. She turned to look at Daniel directly. The Zarathi think they know what humanity is capable of. They saw our fleet and our weapons and our tactics, and they think that is all we have. But they are wrong. What they saw today was just the beginning. The real strength of humanity is not our ships or our weapons. It is our ability to keep going, to keep fighting, to never give up no matter how bad things get. Catherine straightened her shoulders. The Empire is going to learn that lesson very soon. And by the time they understand what they are facing, it will be too late to stop us. The next morning, Catherine stood before the United Earth Defense Council and presented her plan. She talked for 3 hours, laying out every detail of her strategy for turning the tide against the Zarathi Empire. There were arguments and debates, concerns and objections. Some council members thought she was being too aggressive. Others worried about spreading humanity's resources too thin. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would not hide behind its defenses and wait for the next attack. They would take the fight to the enemy. They would free the conquered worlds and build an alliance that the Empire could not defeat. The message went out across the galaxy on every frequency humanity could broadcast. It was translated into every language they knew and sent in every direction where intelligent life might be listening. This is Admiral Catherine Cole of the United Earth Defense Coalition. 3 days ago, the Zarathi Empire sent their largest fleet to conquer our world. They expected an easy victory. They found something very different. The message included footage from the battle. Ships exploding, the gate activating, the moment when the human fleet surrounded the Zerathi and turned certain defeat into absolute victory. The Zerathi believed they could not be beaten. They were wrong. Any species that is willing to fight can defeat them. Any world that refuses to surrender can win. Catherine's voice grew strong and clear. To the conquered peoples of the galaxy, you are not alone anymore. Humanity stands ready to help you. We will share our technology, our weapons, our knowledge. We will fight beside you against the Empire. And together, we will be free. She paused for a moment. To the Zerathi Empire, you were warned. We told you that we were ready for you. Now you know that we spoke the truth. The age of your empire is ending. A new dawn is rising across the galaxy, and humanity will be there to see it. The message ended. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, billions of beings heard the words of Admiral Catherine Cole. Some were afraid. Some were skeptical. But many, especially those who had lived under Zerathi rule for generations, felt something they had not felt in a very long time. Hope. On Luna Base. Daniel Hayes stood beside Catherine as they watched the message broadcast finish. Well, he said, there is no going back now. Catherine nodded. No, there is not. She looked out at the stars, at the vast universe that was waiting for humanity to explore it, to change it, to fill it with life and hope and possibility. We have a lot of work to do, she said, but we are ready. Together, they walked into the future, and the galaxy would never be the same.